Hi everyone, I hope you're all having a great week. What can I say about this week's painting project? Well, I guess the first thing I could say is that the inspiration for the painting is really my colors. And it's not so much that I have a specific plan for the painting having chosen these two colors, but that the colors are just kind of gonna guide me in my intuitive painting process. So I've picked two colors, quinacridone burnt orange and phthalo turquoise, and I'm going to be working with these two colors, and later on I'll also add something else. And the project is going to be a lot about experimentation. So I'm going to be experimenting with blending the colors, and also with adding a product that I've never used before in watercolors. It's actually a product that's not a watercolor product. It's an alcohol ink, and I am a little curious to see what it will do in my painting because I've never used it in a watercolor painting process before, though I have used alcohol. And when you drop alcohol into wet watercolor paint, it will sort of repel the paint and create interesting marks. And I'm curious to see if this product that I'm going to add in my painting will have a similar effect, or how it will react to the watercolor paint. I really love the combination of the turquoise and the burnt orange. I find the two colors look very good together, and they really excite my senses, I guess. And so that's one of the reasons I wanted to work with these two colors in particular. And I'm gonna try to work using them and combining them in different ways. In this part of the process, I'm gonna add some turquoise and leave these little windows of paper, white paper, showing through, where I'm gonna come in and add that alcohol ink that I was telling you about. And like I said before, I've never done this before, so I'm not 100% sure how this is gonna go. And it could be good, it could be not really what I wanted to create. But no matter what, it's going to be a learning experience, and I will see if this is something I'll want to repeat in the future or not. So I grabbed one of my pipettes and took some of that brass alcohol ink color straight from the bottle, and now I'm just dropping it into these little windows. I was sort of hoping that it would have a little bit of a repelling effect and that it might spread a little bit more, but it tends to dry very quickly as soon as it hits the paper. And so it's not really the effect that I was hoping to get, but that's okay. I will do something a little bit later on to change this, and I'll just keep working on my painting and adding to it. And I'll also try adding the alcohol ink a little bit later over the paint while it's wet and over the paint when it's dry, and see how it works. I had added some water to my turquoise in my paint palette earlier, and now I have gone in with my pipette and picked up some of that paint, and I'm just dropping it into this section. I'm noticing that maybe it's a little bit more water than I actually want to have on the paper at this point, but that water and paint is going to spread, and hopefully it's going to create something that I want to work with. Interestingly, as the water and paint are moving over that section of burnt orange, it looks almost like an eagle in flight is starting to take form. And so I find that really neat. I don't know if it's something I'll want to keep in a painting or not, but I do love that that happened. I have mentioned maybe a couple of times, or at least one time before in another video, that often when I'm painting, I will have these images of birds that seem to come up in the textures in my paint, and I really love that. And so it's neat for me to be witnessing that take shape on my painting at this point. While the paint is still wet on the top portion of my painting, I'm going to bring out the Pinata Brass alcohol ink again, and I'm going to use just a plain old wooden skewer to drop some of that alcohol ink directly into the wet paint to see how it reacts. I see that there is a slight reaction around the contour of where the alcohol ink is dropped. There's a slight amount of the wet watercolor that's being repelled, but it's not a very obvious effect. Still, it does look neat in the painting, and I love how the alcohol ink dries kind of very quickly and sort of stays very set. So that's an interesting effect that I can see myself using again in other paintings. Once I was done working on my background, I let it completely dry, and once it was dry, I rubbed out the salt from the areas where I had added some salt. It's important for me in particular to do this before I start working with my pens and markers, because if I were to try to work over areas where there was still salt that I hadn't removed, it would either wreak havoc on the tips of my markers or make it difficult for me to come in and add my marks. Now, that being said, I have never left the salt on the paper before. I always tend to remove it. It does have a neat and interesting looking texture once it's all dry, and it does adhere to the paper for the most part. So it could be interesting to explore the possibility of creating a painting with texture where once I've completed all the marks I wanted to create, I leave the salt in certain sections of the painting just for added texture and visual interest. But I've never done it before, and so I cannot say whether or not this is something I quote unquote recommend to do, but hey, why not? I'm all about recommending experimentation, and even as I'm saying this, I'm thinking, it'd be neat to actually try leaving the salt on paper, and I'm sure someone has done it somewhere before. I just have never done it myself. In this area of the painting, I didn't really like how the blobs of that alcohol ink had sort of like left their mark on the paper when I initially added it, and so I came back in with my wooden skewer and I'm working with the pointed tip to sort of like paint in some little squiggly shapes. Nothing specific, but I want to try and create the effect of having dropped more of that alcohol ink in. And I notice that when I drop it, if I just drop it, it just creates a circle or a blob, and I don't really want to leave it as that. So that's why I'm coming in with the tip of this skewer, this wooden skewer, and I'm sort of painting that alcohol ink in. And I'm already loving that effect much more. I'm not really 100% sure what to do with the shapes left by the paint in this section of the painting. I like it. I really like the fact that it looks a little bit like the silhouette of an eagle flying in the sky. But it's a very deformed eagle, and so I'd have to do something to modify it, even though I do love the abstract look of it. I am not 100% sure I actually want to keep it. I like that it showed up, but that doesn't mean that I want it to stay in the painting, even if it did. And maybe if I spent a little bit more time thinking about it, I could figure out a way to add it to this painting that would work well with me. But for now, I basically traced out the outline with my pen, and then I started to add some stippling. And as I'm doing it, my intuition is really not feeling it. So, I did it. I'm going to stick with it for now, but there's a good chance that's going to change. Here, I'm going to say very honestly that I am on a roll of creating marks that my intuition asked me to create, and then as I was creating the marks, I was not really feeling the marks. But that's okay. Part of me is thinking, well, I'll figure out a way to work around those marks that I'm not really digging at this point. I just haven't figured out exactly what that workaround is going to be yet. And I won't lie, part of me is feeling like this painting is now starting to look extremely busy, and I'm not really digging it. I'm struggling with it, and I'm like having a lot of internal doubt, and I'm wondering if I should just give up on it altogether. Now, if I give up on it, it's never going to turn into anything I like. It's going to end up either in the trash bin or in a pile of unused backgrounds. And I'd really like to stick this out. So I'm going to keep working on it and see what's going to happen. Sometimes my star gold is exactly the thing to turn a painting around. But in this case, I'll be very honest, again, I'm not 100% sure that this is the way to go. And I'm actually feeling like the star gold against the colors I currently have in the background is a little bit too yellow, maybe. I'm not 100% sure. Anyway, I'll add more and see if somehow that feels better. And if it doesn't, then I've got another trick up my sleeve. So yeah, I am now officially really not liking what I've done. And the trick up my sleeve is a flat brush and some water. As you can see, you're only seeing part of the painting right now. I was on the verge of completely giving up on this painting, and I was not even worrying about filming at this point because I was like, not feeling it. So basically what I'm doing is I'm coming in with some clean water and my flat brush, and I'm just going over all of the areas of the painting that I am not digging. And the cool thing about doing that is that as I'm working on doing this, something is shifting in the painting and I'm liking it better. So something is shifting in the painting, but something may also be shifting in my perspective. So I have been having a bit of a rough week. I hurt my neck at the beginning of last week, and I've been having a really hard time doing anything that involves looking down. And when I'm painting, that's oftentimes what I'm doing, especially when I'm filming. And so I was really struggling with feeling the pain in my neck as I was working on this painting. And I was having a bit of a pity party, I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes, when you're struggling with pain and not feeling well, it's hard not to feel down. I think it's actually normal to feel down because times like that take away from the moments where we're feeling well and we can do all the things we want to be doing. And so I've been struggling over the last couple of weeks with this neck pain and then other stuff that's going on. And so yeah, today I was having a pity party. I needed to have that moment of feeling down and giving myself the space to feel down and feel all the emotions that I was feeling so that I could get through them. Because the only way through these emotions is to actually feel them. There's no way to run away from them. They're going to stay in there and they're going to want to be felt. And so I gave myself that space. And after doing that, I was able to regain perspective on what I was doing and sort of refocus my mind on creating something that brought me joy. Does that mean that I'm going to create the most beautiful painting I've ever created in my life? Maybe not. But what I'm enjoying about being in this part of the process now is that I'm letting myself overcome the challenges that I'm experiencing, and I'm continuing to work completely with the idea that this may in fact end up being a quote-unquote failed painting, and that I want to be fine with that, because as I'm painting, I'm learning something about this process. And I'm also learning to give myself compassion. If I'm not feeling well, then what do I need? And that may mean that I need to take breaks. And that's what I did. I took a break from this painting and then I came back to it. I gave my neck a chance to rest. And when it was feeling better, I came back to it. And lo and behold, I'm able to look at the painting in a much different light. So maybe the silhouette of an eagle showed up in my painting earlier, not because I was being called to paint an eagle, but I was being guided that I may have to encounter a situation, or that I was going to encounter a situation that I would have to rise above. And so that's what this process now has turned into for me, a situation that I am rising above. And I'm finding ways to work through a painting process that has not gone easily from the get-go. There have been some challenges along the way, but because I'm not giving up on this painting, I'm finding ways to work through the challenges, and I'm learning something not only about myself, but I'm also learning something about the painting process and what I like and what I don't like, and the kinds of things that I can do to maybe fix paintings that I'm not totally in love with. And it's a great reminder that a painting is not done until I say and feel it's done. And it just needed a little bit more work. It needed a little bit more love. And that's what I'm offering it right now. Interestingly enough, what my painting needed a little bit more care and attention, patience and persistence is also what I need at this moment. When I offer myself more compassion, when I actually give myself the time to stop and assess what it is I actually need in any specific moment, my body seems to relax and things start to flow more freely and more easily. At this point, I've decided to bring in my black brush pen to break up some of those sections a little bit by adding some more value contrast using black. And I think it'll maybe, what's the word I'm looking for? I think the black will actually also make the painting look a little less busy. It may sound counterintuitive to add something to a painting when it feels busy, but the idea of bringing in the black will also distract the eye from a lot of those marks that I've created in the background, because the black will draw more attention than some of these marks. And so I think it'll be a good distraction. Do I know 100% for sure? No, I don't. But the only way for me to actually really know or to learn whether or not this will work is to give it a try. So that's what I'm doing. As I'm finishing up on adding these lines, I feel that it was definitely the right way to go. It somehow feels like it's bringing the whole painting to a more cohesive composition, and I am so happy that I stuck with it, because in the end, I actually really love the results of this painting. I hope this process was a chance for you to see that sometimes a painting process doesn't necessarily go exactly the way we'd like it to go. And there are ways to work around it. And when we're not sure what we're doing is working, it's important to try something different. And in this case, pulling out a flat brush and some water really seemed to help move things in the right direction. It's also important to remember to be compassionate with ourselves and to offer ourselves a chance to step away from the painting process so that we can come back to it with fresh eyes. Thank you for making the time to join me on my creative journey. I hope you have a wonderful week and happy creating!